Hello, students. I wanted to talk to you today about researching ethically and what that means for this particular assignment. So, your goal with your career project, and I can even just pull up some of the sources here. I know, look at all these things that I have going on. Your goal for your career project is to research a prospective career, so something you think you would like to do for a living, and there are certain sources we want you to have. One of them, if you look down here, it says you should use the Occupational Outlook Handbook and at least 3 other sources. So sources are places where you get information from. And traditionally these are, not traditionally I should say, but in the last few years these are from the internet. You can use other sources, not internet sources, actual books, or even interview people. If you know someone in the field who's working in it, that could count as a source. But we also want to talk about when we're dealing with information that doesn't come from our own head, which means research. How do we research ethically? What does that mean? Why is it important? How do we do it? So I'm just going to give you a basic intro to this today, and when you go on, or maybe you've already had ENC 1101 and 1102, you'll hear more about research and documentation and avoiding plagiarism and being ethical and all those different kinds of things. So this is just kind of an intro to this idea. So let's start with the Occupational Handbook. There was a link to that in your career project. And this is a great place to start to learn about your career. And I say this, or I have it ordered like this in a couple of places, but I really recommend that you take your My Plan assessment before you go and look up careers in the Occupational Handbook. You don't have to do it that way. It could be interesting to do it the other way, but I think it would behoove you to know what does a test or an inventory of your likes, dislikes, strengths, and weaknesses say that you might be well suited for as a career. So the Occupational Outlook Handbook, I'm just going to use the term mediator. I was talking with someone the other day and we were talking about, unfortunately, this couple that we know that's getting a divorce and how they're going to see a mediator. And I've heard that they're being used more and more. So I was curious, what does a mediator do? How much money do they earn? Are they like a lawyer? Do they earn as much as a lawyer? Is there as much school involved? That kind of thing. And so if we put mediator in our search box here, and that's just one way to look at this website, you see a couple of links pop up. And if I read the first couple of things here, I think I'm going to go to the Occupational Outlook Handbook, because I want to know what they do and what this handbook has to say about them. And since that's one of my sources, I'm just going to stay here for now. So, occupation, arbitrators, mediators, and conciliators. Well, that sounds interesting, and it looks like it's kind of in this legal occupations field, which is what I thought. Bachelor's degree, entry-level education, 61,000 is the median pay. But I want to learn more about what they do, so let's see if I click on this where this will bring me. Oh yeah, okay, so this breaks a lot of it down, and please note that these are all the things that I asked you to include in your presentation and in your narrative, so you'll see those things listed. Now, if you're including this as part of your research, one of the things that you want to think about is, how do I include this into a PowerPoint or a Glogster or an essay? Can I just copy and paste this information? So my teacher wants to know what arbitrators and mediators do. Can I just go like this? Arbitrators are usually attorneys or business people with expertise in a particular field. They hear and decide disputes between opposing parties as an impartial third party. Arbitrators may work alone or in a panel with other arbitrators. In some case, arbitrators may decide procedural issues, such as what evidence may be submitted and when hearings will be held. Well, I say, okay, well, I have to get into my essay or my PowerPoint somehow what this is. So I Control C to get my thing in here. Is it okay for me to just copy this over and then move on, with my essay? Well, no, we wouldn't consider that ethical research, just to copy and paste it in like that. If you're going to use word for word what is in a source, which means copy and pasting as word for word, this would be called a direct quotation. And so to indicate a direct quotation, you need to put quotation marks at the beginning of the end to show that this is exactly, if you see my little quotation marks there and there, this is exactly what was there in the original. However, in college, most instructors do not want you to quote big blocks of text. And if you think about any research you're doing, if you're in your history class and you're researching a paper on Alexander the Great, you probably don't know much about him. So a lot of your paper, if you're writing a 4 or 3-page paper, is going to be research. And it's not acceptable just to copy and paste passages from the sources you find about Alexander the Great. Maybe string them together with a couple of your own words so they flow. That's not what they're looking for. When you're dealing with sources, your default for sources should be, I'm going to write it out here just so you know, to paraphrase or summarize those sources. And that means to put them in your own words. In your own words. So that can be really challenging, right? That's the first order of business. And it doesn't mean that you can't ever directly quote a passage, but this should be used sparingly. You don't want to have large chunks of quoted information in a presentation or an essay. It's just not considered really learning, because to copy and paste something, you're not assimilating that knowledge, you're not making it your own. And that's what we hope that you're doing when you're dealing with this information. You're reading it, you're kind of putting it into your own words, you're documenting it. That's one way of making it your own and synthesizing it with your own learning. So how would we paraphrase or summarize this? You might have to read it a couple times, and generally I also recommend that you kind of look away from it after a while, because if you're looking at it while you're trying to paraphrase or summarize it, then it's hard not to lift phrases or to follow the same structure. Oh, and I should have said, sorry, to back up here, I gave you 2 words here, to paraphrase or summarize. And the real difference here is that a summary just condenses this information, it makes it shorter, whereas a paraphrase makes that information in more detail. It's just longer, it includes more specificity than a summary would. A summary is more just the main ideas. So if we're looking at this thing and we say arbitrators are usually attorneys or business people with expertise in a field, I'm going to try and create a summary here on the spot. We'll see how well this works, because this isn't usually easy to do. With expertise in a particular field, they hear and decide disputes between opposing parties. As an impartial third party, arbitrators may work alone or in a panel with other arbitrators, decide procedural issues, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so if I say arbitrators work in the legal field to resolve conflicts and let's see. Arbitrators work there to resolve conflicts and act as and right now I'm going to put this in quotes because I can't really think of a phrase for this, an impartial third party. That's pretty specific. Maybe I can think of something there that isn't their word choice in a little while. Act as an impartial third party. they often determine what can be entered as evidence in court cases. Let me make sure that's right. Did they say that? In some cases, arbiters may decide procedural issues, such as what evidence may be submitted and when hearings will be held. They often can determine what can be entered as evidence in court cases. I think that's accurate. And schedule what could be entered as evidence. They often determine what could be entered as evidence and when to schedule court cases. Because I think hearings and court cases are synonyms. Oh, and I have a typo there. So here what I've tried to do is I've tried to take the main idea of this passage and put it in my own words. And what you'll find too is you may think you understand a passage until you have to summarize it. That's when you kind of go, do I really know what they're talking about? I'm not sure. And so that's where wrestling with it comes into place, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Now, MLA, which is the Modern Language Association, and it's one documentation style. It's prevalent in the humanities, so in your English classes, your philosophy classes, your literature classes, things like that, they're probably going to be using MLA format. And then you go to your sciences and maybe even history, you'll find that they probably use APA, which is the American Psychological Association. They have their own formatting style. And that's, like I said, history, psychology, sociology, those kind of classes will use that format. So you want to know what format your teacher expects you to use. And then you want to be able to have some kind of handbook or handout from your teacher that goes over the rules of that format. Now, both APA and MLA say that if you take something from a source, if you paraphrase or summarize a source, or you directly quote it, you need to give credit. You need to give credit in two places. One is right after you summarize, paraphrase, or directly quote. So that would be here. And then the other is at the final page of your paper. Boop, 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 boop. And I'll show you how to set this up, in a bit. And APA calls this a bibliography, but we're working in MLA, so we're going to call it a works cited list. And MLA doesn't include the word list, they just include the words works cited. So we'll get to that in a minute, how to give credit to this source. Now, I'm going to link to a couple of different places that give you information because you guys don't have a handbook for this class in terms of how to cite in text. Two of the best, I think, are the Purdue OWL. Purdue is a university. And this says MLA in-text citations, the basics. So there are many different formatting rules for MLA and they can be overwhelming, but I'm just trying to give you the basics here. So, and there's also MLA works cited page basic format, but for now we're just going to deal with MLA in-text citations. The second source that I think is really good is your our library source. It's a great resource for you in terms of MLA format, and you can also go to the Learning Center or the librarians, or you can come to me and I will help you with all that.